Hey guys, Steve here, and last time we completed a versus battle with Dugong and Vaporeon. Today's video will be another special battle of two psychic heavyweights. These Pokemon being Kadabra,
Psybe.
and Mr. Mime. These two Pokemon are extraordinary, and it took me a while to find you a close matchup. Some of the Pokemon I considered for this race were Hypno and Jinx. Unfortunately, the problem with Hypno is that the base stats are far too strong to be compared to either of the competitors. And the problem with Jinx is the starting moveset will only have Pound for Brock, so it just won't be able to put up a reasonable time to be considered a good race. Let's take a look at the stats on these Pokemon to get a good idea of what to expect during this run. Both Pokemon sporting very close totals of 450 and 440 respectively. The HP will be exactly the same, so we will get to see which one will fare better against the same competition with the same amount of HP. Not particularly known for their attack stats, Kadabra and Mr. Mime cannot only rely on Psychic alone. More on that when we get to the movesets. Obviously, we know that both of the competitors boast enormous special stats, and in this generation they double a special defense too. This will allow our Pokemon to be able to tank any of the elemental hits quite well, and for once, not worry about the Alakazam entirely. Now for the Achilles heel of our competitors, Kadabra has one weakness: all physical moves. This being one of the reasons why this run is so cool, because Mr. Mime is so similar and yet so different. As we established in the last video, 70 speed is basically enough where you will outspeed everything except Alakazam. About 80 is where you don't even need to consider Carbos anymore, so the speed here is basically the same. We all know that Psychic type is the strongest type in the game offensively. Defensively, there's technically a few types with only one weakness. Normal is weak to fighting, Electric is weak to ground, Ghost is weak to Ghost, and Psychic is weak to Bug. Unlike the others, however, there isn't a strong Bug move, so there's a low likelihood of being one-shot by anything in the entire game. Now, here's the biggest reason why I wanted to do this challenge. You all know that Kadabra and Mr. Mime are going to win, and make the game look easy. But it would be boring to watch the same challenge twice, even if it's a close match. What separates these two and makes it interesting is the movesets. For all the graces that Kadabra gets, it doesn't get a diverse moveset. We obviously get Psychic and Recover, but that's not enough to carry you through the entire game. We have to look at some of these other moves for the Psychic matchups. And we really only have two options here: Dig and Body Slam. Body Slam is one of the most obvious choices since it's incredibly overpowered and not resisted by anything except rock. But Dig in this generation has 100 base power, and with an attack stat of 45, every last bit of power is needed. But on the other end of the spectrum, we have Mr. Mime, who starts with a badge boosting move in Barrier and gets Thunderbolt as coverage as another good special move. More on badge boosting during my creator shoutout this week and linked video in the description. Unlike the previous video, Recover is a better option than Rest was for Dugong. But will badge boost, better defense, and better move diversity propel Mr. Mime ahead of Kadabra like Vaporeon? We'll just have to find out. I'm personally biased because Alakazam is one of my favorites, and I have a lot of practice with it. But maybe the lower stats will cause unforeseen problems that Alakazam didn't have. We'll just have to find out. But my personal vote is on Kadabra. The rules are going to be the same as they always are. They will be located in the description section of this video, or pause the screen if you'd like to see them. All 5 Easter eggs were located in the last video. This video will also have 5. Here are the comments that found the Easter eggs from the last video. Please try and guess in the comment section which Pokemon you will think will win, and by how much. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell to stay up to date on future videos. If you want to help this channel grow, please comment Psychic Showdown for the YouTube algorithm. First off, we're going to start the game by grabbing our level 5 Mr. Mime and replacing Charmander with the Universal Pokemon Randomizer to make sure that Champ has a Blastoise. I give it the nickname Mime because that was the nickname of Ash's mom's Mr. Mime in the anime. I picked Blastoise because the Alakazam run already chose this starter to face with, and it will allow you to see the differences in the runs. Plus, the Venusaur team would be unbelievably easy, because Venusaur could be one-shot and it would replace Exeggutor, which is actually a very difficult Pokemon for Psychic types to face. And the Charizard team was basically of the same difficulty. Thanks to our incredible special stat and high power confusion move, I decided to go to Champ 1A next. The following battle goes basically as planned. The Pidgey, despite being level 9, 3 levels higher, we were able to defeat quite easily, but then we have a sand attack on us, but it doesn't matter because we don't miss a single move and take out the Squirtle pretty easily as well. I'm pretty sure both of our competitors are going to be able to beat the game on minimum battles, so there really is no point in battling these extra trainers unless I really think I need the extra experience, so I decided to go right to Brock as well, only battling the level 9 Weedle in Viridian Forest. I'm sure you guys get sick of all these people always telling you if you have a special move you can beat Brock, but I mean, it's true. Take a look at the bottom side of the screen. Anything with an S, except for electricity, is able to beat Brock with ease, even fire moves that are resisted by Brock. We then make quick work of all the trainers on Route 3 and start working our way towards Mount Moon. As I made it through Mount Moon, I heard a strange sound. I make my way toward this sound. It's coming from the Helix fossil. It's saying, "Please like, subscribe, and comment Psychic Showdown." It sounds like sound logic, but I need to make my way towards Champ 2. Now, in my routing, I made sure to pick up Mega Punch, so that way when I battle Misty and I'm facing her Starmie, I have a non-psychic move to battle her with. However, as I started Champ 2, I then realized I forgot to teach Mega Punch and I started to panic. So, I then start the battle and fingers crossed. Champ 2 then begins with his usual Pidgeotto, and we start with a confusion. Of course, it then decides to use Sand Attack. Luckily, the second Sand Attack misses, and we get through Pidgeotto. Then, he decides to go with Abra next. We get a really lucky Confuse on Abra, so that makes the battle a lot easier and quicker. Then, for Rattata, it's just one single Confusion. For Squirtle, this one's gonna be in the bag. We got a critical hit Confusion. We only miss one Confusion overall, and we get the win. For Misty, I decide that I'm going to go ahead and start with Barrier and try to badge boost my attack stat. Once I have all 3 barriers set up, I can then switch over to Mega Punch, which should, in theory, do a lot more damage. We get through Staryu with decent HP to spare. Then, for Starmie, we go ahead and start out with a Mega Punch. Unfortunately, she starts with an X-Defend, causing our damage to do half. Then, from there, she starts using very strong offensive moves, eventually taking us out. I did realize that in the first attempt, we did level up after the Staryu. So, in this attempt, I go ahead and try and badge boost after the Staryu. I then take massive damage while just setting up, taking lots of special attacks. By the time I finally get fully set up, I am just unable to win. On the next attempt, I just decided screw it. We were able to take a lot of damage on the turns we did set up. So, in theory, we should just be able to take it out by using Mega Punches on those turns instead. And that theory is confirmed as we're able to take out Starmie on the first try. With that taken care of, let's go ahead and check in on Kadabra, who has just started the game. We're going to start the game by grabbing our level 5 Kadabra and replacing Charmander with the Universal Pokemon Randomizer for the same reasons as Mr. Mime. I give it the nickname Kadabra because I thought it was funny splitting the syllables. One thing of note that I didn't mention at the beginning is that Kadabra is in the medium slow level up group, so after this Champ 1 battle, we're actually going to level up to level 6. For the same reasons we did it for Mr. Mime, we're going to go ahead and battle Rival 1A for Kadabra as well, because, well, we have a very strong Psychic type, and this is going to be a very easy matchup. Brock's rocks really aren't going to hold up in this matchup, as Kadabra is just able to slice through Geodude like butter. And then, for Onix, we're just going to go ahead and use a few confusions and it goes down as well, just like that. Now, because we don't have to waste any time in Mount Moon picking up Mega Punch, we can head right over to Champ 2 next and save ourselves a load of time. Champ 2 then starts out with his usual Pidgeotto, and we go for a Confusion, which luckily confuses. Then we get to take out Pidgeotto with the next Confusion without taking a Sand Attack. Then, for Abra, we're just going to go ahead and use Confusions until we finally take it down after 4. Now, if Mr. Mime wasn't going to have any problems with Rattata, well, Kadabra doesn't either. That takes us to Squirtle, in which we just take it down with 2 Confusions. Now, one thing is going to differ here between the 2 runs. Mr. Mime was able to go ahead and take on Misty immediately after Bill. However, Kadabra has to take down the innocent bystander Rocket before we go ahead and take on Misty because we need to pick up Dig. Dig is going to be crucial against this matchup because we have a lower attack stat and Dig has a 100 power and not resisted by either water or psychic, which makes it perfect for Misty. Now, Misty's going to go ahead and start out with Staryu, and we're going to go ahead and start out with a Dig. Now, after 2 turns, we do a little bit more than half. Then, on the next Dig, she uses an X-Defend, but her next Dig crits and takes it out. Then for Starmie, we go ahead and start out with the dig. She unfortunately starts out with an X defend, causing our dig to do very, very little damage. From here, all we have to do is really hope for a crit. We don't get that crit and she takes us out. On the next attempt, I use a confusion on Staryu and unfortunately it doesn't one-shot it either. Now, for Starmie, we go ahead and start out with a dig. She doesn't use an X defend on turn 1 and we do about double the damage. Unfortunately, she does use an X defend on the next attack and we go ahead and do slow damage. It's basically a battle of attrition until one of us crits and takes out the loser. Luckily for us, neither of us crit, and I ended up being faster and taking her out. Now that both Pokemon have taken down Misty, let's go ahead and take a look at the splits. Now, it looks like neither Pokemon really had a problem with Brock, and nobody expected them to. Now, for Champ 2, the gap gets really far only because, well, a few reasons. Well, Mr. Mime had to pick up Mega Punch. Not only that, Mr. Mime also had to two-shot a lot of Pokemon that Kadabra was able to one-shot. That 20 extra special really does matter. In fact, you get to see it once again as we see the Misty split. The only difference between the Champ 2 and the Misty split is Nugget Bridge, and well, Mr. Mime wasn't able to one-shot everything on Nugget Bridge. Meanwhile, Kadabra was, so even though Kadabra had to battle the Rocket to get to Misty, it still didn't matter. It took an even bigger lead. With all of that said, let's go ahead and continue on with Kadabra. As we arrive in the SSN, there is no reason to get Body Slam, as we already have Dig, so we can just go ahead and head right over to Champ 3. Champ 3 then starts out with his usual Pidgeotto, and we use a Confusion, which clearly does almost all the damage, but Pidgeotto takes itself out, followed by Raticate, which is an easy one-shot. Then, for Kadabra, we go ahead and use a Dig, which gets a crit. Then, for Wartortle, I go ahead and switch back to Confusion, and we take it out. Then, surprisingly, we learn Psybeam right at the end of the battle, which is perfect timing, because now we're going to go ahead and battle Surge next. Surge then starts with his usual Voltorb, and we go ahead and take it down with a single Psybeam. If Psybeam can take down Voltorb, then Psybeam can take down Pikachu. Then, for Raichu, we go ahead and use a Psybeam, which does about half, followed by a Dig to see which one will do more damage. Clearly, Dig is able to do at least half, so that'll make it the better move to use in the next run. Then, for Rock Tunnel, it's not really any sort of challenge whatsoever, the only challenge being the Cubone Slowpoke Trainer and the Slowpoke Trainer, only because it's a slow battle. Not really that much of a challenge at all. And we have Recover this time, so it makes it real easy. Then, when we arrive to Celadon, we have the choice of going to the Mart or going to Erica. Well, I already told you guys, if we can defeat Erica, we will defeat Erica, because she's going to give us some extra money which will allow us to buy an extra vitamin. Erica then begins with her Victory Bell, and we go ahead and use a Psybeam, which ends up not taking it out, and then a Sleep Powder Miss allows us to get through. Then, because of a grueling battle with the Execute Trainer to her left, I then have to use a Recover before then taking it out with 2 Psybeams. I want to avoid any shenanigans to happen with this Vileplume since I wasn't able to take out the Victory Bell with a single Psybeam. Luckily, that Petal Dance didn't do very much damage and we get the win. That win allowed us to get over the hump and buy the 4th Carbos, so now our special stat's going to be majorly powered up, and it was already high to begin with. Short PSA here, because really, this battle is almost irrelevant. We actually end up with more HP than we started with, but the question here is, if Champ 4 doesn't pose a threat, should I even bother considering showing the battles? Because, well, he's meant to be played after you finish Rock Tunnel, and because of my routing, I always battle him after Erica, which leads him really far under-leveled, and they never really are very close, even with a Pokemon who he, in theory, should be good against. I did fight with the idea of picking up Psychic before or after the Pokemon Tower, and the thing is, I ended up going with neither, because by the time I had actually gotten to the point where I could pick up Psychic, I realized that I was so close to the level required that it might just be a straight up waste of time to pick it up. Well, I mean, right now we're about to face Koga and we're going in at very close level to Psychic. This Koga battle is most likely going to be mostly a joke because, well, his Pokemon are Poison type and they're weak to Psychic, and well, we have a very high special stat in Psybeam. So we're going to go ahead and mow down all of his Pokemon here, and by the time we get to Weezing, this is the time when we have a decision to make. We have to decide, do we take down Weezing with 2 Psychics and hope that he doesn't use a Self-Destruct, or do we go with a Dig and then hope he uses Self-Destruct while we're underground? I decided that because we're faster, we're going to go ahead and just use Psybeam, and if he ends up using Self-Destruct, so be it. He ends up using an extra defend, and it doesn't even matter. We're going to go ahead and learn Psychic right after this, which is very convenient. Get rid of our confusion, and now we have basically our final moveset. Now I'm going to go ahead and use my 3 PP ups to make sure that I have enough Psychic PP for the rest of the game. After that, we then head over to Champ 5, who is meeting us at Silphco. Champ 5, a usual point of contention in these kinds of runs, really doesn't do a whole lot. We're going to go ahead and just take out Pidgeot with a Psychic and a Psybeam, that followed by Growlithe with a Psychic, then Execute. Well, there's not really a good choice for Execute, but 2 Psychics will do the job because we can just overpower anything we ever want. Followed by Alakazam, where we have no choice but to use Dig. He apparently decides to really like Recover, so we're going to have to wait until we get a Dig crit. Unfortunately, the Dig crit doesn't take it out, but he doesn't use Psychic for a single turn and we take it out, followed by the Blastoise with 2 more Psychics. This then leaves us at a crossroads. We can either fight Blaine or we can fight Sabrina. Well, Sabrina's going to be hard. We already know this from the Alakazam run, and because we just got a Lapras, let's go ahead and fight Blaine next. In our last Alakazam run, I was able to prove to you guys that Psychic was going to do more damage than Dig. And well, even though Alakazam has a higher amount of special than Kadabra does, I'm pretty sure the point is still going to remain here, so I try out Dig on the first Pokemon, but then I switch over to Psychic for the rest. And Psychic does do a pretty good job. And well, Blaine is Blaine. He doesn't really do a whole lot of damage. I try and test out both of the moves on the Arcanine, and well, Psychic ended up doing 66 damage, whereas Dig only did 53, so the point still stands. Anyways, now it's time for the weirdest matchup in the entire game. It's the hardest matchup for Kadabra, and I know this because of the Alakazam run. Well, the thing is, Sabrina is only going to spam Recover with Alakazam. And quite frankly, Psychic and Psybeam are not going to be enough to overtake the Alakazam. So, we have to take it out with a critical hit Dig. Unfortunately, Kadabra is not strong enough with its attack stat to take down Alakazam with a Dig. So now, I have to spam every single move that I can. I have to get special drops, I have to get Psybeam to confuse Alakazam. There is nothing I can do to take down this Alakazam. And because Alakazam has unlimited PP, there is nothing I can do to stop the Recover onslaught. And even though this isn't a difficult battle, because I could probably win with struggle, maybe I can win with struggle. The thing is, I need to win in some other way. As you can see, I've gotten quite a few special drops. Special is actually lower than all of the rest of the stats at this point. It takes a confusion on Alakazam to finally hit itself before I can get the win. With that difficult battle completed, it is finally time to switch over back to Mr. Mime and see just how Mr. Mime is going to do throughout the game. We last left off as Mr. Mime was heading towards Champ 3. After that, we once again are able to race through the game without any difficulties whatsoever. We then eventually wind up battling Champ 3 in the SS Hand after picking up Body Slam. Not that the last attempt was any difficulty whatsoever, this attempt is not going to be a difficulty at all either because, as we've mentioned, because we've battled all of those extra trainers up to this point, we have a pretty significant stat boost over the last time we played him. And now we have Body Slam, so we can take out Kadabra no problem either without having to waste off confusions. Also, another thing that I didn't mention when we were talking about movesets is we learned Light Screen at level 23, which is pretty cool because now we're going to be battling Surge next, and because of his electric attacks, Light Screen's going to be the perfect counter to his moves. I decide since Voltorb has Sonic Boom, we're not going to go ahead and use Light Screen on Voltorb. That seems like a bad idea. So, as the Pikachu comes out, we start with the Light Screen. Unfortunately, he uses Thunder Wave, which then paralyzes us going right into Raichu. Unfortunately for us, we get fully paralyzed on our first confusion and we get hit by a massive critical hit Thunderbolt. Luckily after that, we're able to get a few confusions together and get the win, and we saw that his damage was significantly lower thanks to our Light Screens. Once again, I'm going to go ahead and head over to Erica next. Even though I don't have Psybeam like Kadabra did, Confusion should hopefully two-shot the rest of her Pokemon. Erica then starts out with her usual Victory Bell, and we start with Confusion. Unfortunately, it only does less than half, but her second one does major damage. Then she sends out Tangela, whose only purpose in life is to use Constrict and drop Pokemon's speed. But, unfortunately for her, it doesn't work. Then, last is Vileplume, and unfortunately for her, we just have way too much HP and she just can't keep up, and we get ourselves the win and don't teach ourselves Double Slap. With the money from that victory, we then head over to the Celadon Mart and we go ahead and pick up 4 calcium. This calcium is going to hopefully improve our special damage. We probably need just a little bit of an extra boost. Then I make my way over to Saffron to pick up Psychic. With Psychic as part of our moveset and 2 extra PP ups, there's just no way that Champ 4 is going to stand anywhere near a chance of beating us. Again, he's just going to be a one-shot sweep except for Execute. This battle is just so much of a joke for most Pokemon. Again, we're like 10 levels over all of his entire team at this point. Interestingly enough for Koga, I don't imagine this being very difficult. Barrier is a really strong move against his entire team since they're all using physical moves, and then Psychic, well, they're all weak to Psychic, so that's a big plus. Koga then starts off with his usual coughing, and we go ahead and use a Psychic, which somehow misses. Thank you, Gen 1. But our next one hits and gets us through, followed by the Muck, which then takes 2 Psychics, because, you know, it's a little bit bulkier, and then the last coughing goes down. Now, unfortunately, we haven't set up any barriers until this point, which I then send up a barrier, and he uses self-destruct, and we survive. There's nothing like the feeling of the game literally being out to get you, and you get an easy victory just because you know how to play well. Now, unlike a previous challenge, we can't head to Blaine next because we don't have a water type. Even though we're allowed to use Surf, we don't have a Pokemon for that. So we're gonna have to head to Silphco and battle Champ 5, and then we'll be able to pick up Lapras afterward, and then we'll have the decision to do Sabrina or Blaine. Now, Champ 5 is going to start out with his usual Pidgeot. Now, we're about to level up, so after we take down this Pidgeot, I then decide that it's a good time to use Barrier, because Growlithe is not going to be able to do much against us. The best it could possibly consider doing is burning us, and luckily, it doesn't end up burning us. Now, with the badge boosted stats, we should hopefully have an advantage for the rest of this battle. Unfortunately for us, Execute is then able to paralyze and Leech Seed us, so we're a bit of a disadvantage for the rest of the battle. But luckily for us, we're able to take down Alakazam with only 2 body slams without being fully paralyzed, and even Blastoise, with all of its advantages, still doesn't get a chance to take us out. Now, with Surf ready to be used, we can then head over to Sabrina. But I decided to take a side trip, and we're actually going to go ahead and go down to Blaine. Why Blaine? Well, our badge boosted moves, either Meditate or Barrier, are able to pump up our stats, and Blaine gives the badge boost for Special. Now, we're going to need this badge boost. We don't particularly need it for Sabrina, but it's very useful to have, especially since her Pokemon hit very hard, and even though we resist Psychic, taking less damage is always crucial. Now, for Blaine, this one should be relatively simple. We go ahead and take down Growlithe first, then we're going to level up, and this gives us the opportunity to set up our Meditates. Now, in hindsight, I didn't realize going into this battle I was going to be faster than Arcanine, but, you know, it's better to be safe than it is to be sorry, and because I'm not using Body Slam, the only stat here that gets boosted that's actually useful to be boosted is Defense, and the only attacking move that we got hit with was Stomp, so I just wasted a little bit of extra time on Blaine. The Volcano badge in hand, we can then go ahead and take on Sabrina, and once we're done with Sabrina, take a look at the splits. Outside of losing to Sabrina, I really don't see any way how we're not going to gain time on this. Sabrina is not going to only use Recover, and we're actually going to be able to do significantly more damage because Meditate and Body Slam is going to be so much better of a combo to use than just special moves. And Dig. Now, unfortunately, this Mr. Mime is not letting us set up quickly. He keeps using Double Slap over and over again, and it really slows down the battle, but eventually we do get our 6 Double Slaps set up, and we get to outspeed and take down Alakazam because of badge boosts. Now, last time we took a look at our splits, we were at Misty. So following Misty, it looks like we were able to gain some more time with Kadabra following Surge and Erica. And this makes total sense as our increased speed and special is going to be a big advantage during those 2 battles. However, just like Vaporeon, Mr. Mime is starting to mount a big comeback here on Blaine and Sabrina because we're now able to use badge boosting moves to get past some of our bigger threats in Alakazam. Alakazam not being a threat, but being a time-wasting threat. The loss of time there on Gym 6 is because Champ 5 actually used an Alakazam and it started to recover a bunch of times, and then obviously Sabrina was only using Recover and we had absolutely no answer for Kadabra, whereas Mr. Mime was able to set up with Meditate or Barrier and then take it out with Body Slam. This race is really starting to heat up. Will Kadabra be able to maintain its 1 minute and 15-second lead, or will it be able to take the time back? I guess we'll just have to wait and see, because we're going to take a look at our splits again at Champ 6. Well, we've gotten to Giovanni now, and I'd like to say this was a difficult battle, but we have a fast Pokemon that does high special damage, and quite frankly, either his Pokemon are weak to special moves, or his Pokemon are weak to psychic moves. So it's pretty easy to get through his team in all about one hit. I mean, Rhydon there probably could have survived a hit, but you know, critical hits. Now for Champ 6, I'm not sure where the battle is going to get difficult, so I'm not going to use a rare candy at the start like I normally would consider doing for a badge boosting Pokemon, so let's go ahead and see where things get difficult. Now, we have 3,400 experience before leveling up, so that's probably going to be about half his team. I'm not sure if I can afford to do that, but let's go ahead and see where things get a little bit more dicey. As we get to the Growlithe here, we can definitely tell that we're about to level up, and Execute is going to be our target. So for Execute, I start setting up our Meditates as he continues to use Poison Powder. He does eventually get one Leech Seed off, which starts pinging at us every single turn for massive damage. Eventually, he lands that Poison Powder, and once we're fully set up, we can take it down. Then, Alakazam's going to be an easy one-shot with Body Slam, followed by Blastoise, an easy one-shot with Thunderbolt. Pretty lucky there. Now we're going to head back to Kadabra and see just how well it does during this short stretch of the game. Now, of course, Giovanni is going to be exactly the same for Kadabra. I mean, we're faster, we've got even higher special, and this is really just going to be a one-shot sweep. I don't see anything surviving. I'm not even sure Rhydon could survive. So let's see. Rhydon does survive, but it uses a fissure, and we're like triple the speed, so it had no chance. Now is going to be the battle that we're actually worried about, because Kadabra, again, does not have an answer for the opponent's Alakazam. So we'll go ahead and see if Mr. Mime can take an even bigger lead thanks to this battle. Champ then starts off with his usual Pidgeot, and we use a Psychic, which does massive damage. And then he follows up with a critical hit, Quick Attack, which is nasty. Luckily, Rhyhorn is an easy recover target, and then once we're done, we can go ahead and hit it with a Psychic. Followed by the Growlithe, which can be easily taken out with a Psychic. Then, the Execute will take quite a bit, but we'll be fine. Luckily, it only takes 2 attacks, followed by the Alakazam, where we start off with a Toxic. Then I start using Recover. And then we just go ahead and continue using Recover after we keep getting nailed by critical hit moves. Finally, after one non-critical hit Psybeam, I use a Psychic, but of course I was confused by one of the Psybeams and hit myself. Luckily, we're fine, we can just go ahead and keep on recovering and let Toxic do its job. I then use a Dig to hopefully take it out, and unfortunately, it goes down while I'm underground, and Blastoise is then able to lower its head for a Skull Bash and take me out. Now, on this next attempt, I'm going to go ahead and voice over why I picked Toxic on my Kadabra, and that's actually given to me by one of my friend's runs, Vanman. Vanman decided while he was doing his Gyarados versus Alakazam run that Alakazam did really well using Toxic against those Psychic types, and the Executor by the champion. Seeing as Kadabra is just a worse version of Alakazam, I don't see why not copy that strategy. It seems very good. The alternative is just use Psybeam like I did for Alakazam, and that was a bad idea because I would have to use 20 Psybeams, whereas Toxic could do the same thing. After a long enough period of time, we make it back to Blastoise, use a Psychic, take it down to potion range, and finish it off on the next turn. Now that everybody's all caught up again, let's go ahead and take a gander at the splits. Well, looks like after Gym 7, Giovanni, nothing real particular there, everybody went the same speed, everyone did the same thing. However, for Champ 6, thanks to that reset we had for Kadabra, followed by just how slow the battle with Alakazam is, we actually picked up enough time to take the lead. I mean, who expected that? It's Kadabra we're talking about here. It's basically 90% Alakazam. Something's beating it. Now let's go ahead and see if Mr. Mime can take this momentum and beat the Elite Four faster than Kadabra. But first, let's go ahead and continue on with Kadabra and see how it's going to do at the beginning of the Elite Four. And because we're not relying on a badge boosting move, we're just going to go ahead and use all of our rare candies right at the beginning of the Elite Four to make sure that I can get through no problem, because they have a big lead over me in levels. Lorelei then starts with a Dugong, and we go ahead and start with a Psychic, which does a little bit more than a half, and then we finish her off with the next hit. Followed by Cloyster, which goes down to a critical hit Psychic. Then Slowbro, which takes a critical hit but does survive. The next one then does a special drop and we finish her off with a third one. Followed by Jinx, who we use a Dig, which does not finish it off, which isn't surprising because of that growl we took earlier from Dugong. Then, for Lapras, we go ahead and use a Psychic, which does a little bit less than half. We finish it off with a critical on the next hit. That was relatively painless. I don't know why, but because of that last run, I've had a big fear of Lorelei, so that felt really good. The black belt is going to be a one-shot sweep. If he's not a one-shot sweep, I would be shocked. So far, so good. We've taken down Hitmonlee, followed by the Onix, followed by the only one that would surprisingly survive, and it doesn't. Agatha basically has two weaknesses: Dig/Earthquake and Psychic. Well, we have a Psychic type with Psychic, so this one should be real easy. In fact, we've already gone through basically her entire team, and now we're already on the final Gengar, which gets one shot just like the rest. With the first 3 league members being taken down with no resets whatsoever, Mr. Mime definitely has a big task ahead of it. So let's go ahead and check back in on Mr. Mime to see how it's gonna do. Alright, probably a bad idea here, but I didn't use any rare candies at the start of this battle, so we're actually going in with a bit of a disadvantage. We level up after the Dugong, and now we're going to go ahead and take out the Cloyster because of big weakness to special moves. Then, for Slowbro, because its only attacking move is Water Gun, we're going to go ahead and set up with all of our Meditates first. Once we have all of our Meditates set up, we can then go ahead and use a Thunderbolt. However, take a look at how much experience we have to level up. It's just so low. This is a problem because now after we take out Jinx, we're going to level up. And now, after we get rid of Substitute here, we're going to not be able to take out Lapras in one hit. And then it takes us out after using a Blizzard and a Body Slam. On this next attempt, I used all my rare candies but 3 to make sure that I have enough rare candies for the rest of the league. So we're going to have a big advantage this time. We're going to take out Cloyster with a Thunderbolt, followed by Slowbro, which doesn't get taken out, but we're just going to go ahead and use a Thunderbolt anyways. Followed by Jinx, which then takes little damage from a Body Slam, paralyzes us, and puts us in bad shape for this attempt. Then we finally eventually take it down, taking us to Lapras, who of course takes us out with a Body Slam. On the next attempt, I right all the wrongs that I did on the previous attempt, and I make sure to use all my Meditates on Slowbro this time. So that way, when I go into Jinx, Body Slam actually takes it out in one hit. So that way, when I go into Lapras, I have significantly more HP, and Thunderbolt does the trick and gets us through Lorelei. Now, this does put us at a bit of a disadvantage because Kadabra obviously first tried the first 3 members. But who knows how Kadabra's gonna do against Lance or the champion? I mean, the champion still has that Alakazam, and we still don't have a way to get through it. Not to mention, Executor is a whole problem on its own. But as long as we have edge boosting moves on our side, literally the sky's the limit. We just need to make sure that we play them in the right ways. That battle required no narration, so the Agatha battle's probably going to go pretty easy on its own too. Again, have Psychic, and we're a Psychic type. And on top of that, we have Thunderbolt for Golbat. So we have a move that's literally good against all of her team members. And we've already taken down the final Gengar and moved on. Now, if you go ahead and take a look at these splits, you will have noticed that we have taken a slight backseat to Kadabra. Nothing we can't overcome if Kadabra falls through some hardships of its own, but it's not looking good. But on the bright side, we will clean this up on the second run. This takes us to Lance, who starts with Gyarados. We then use a Thunderbolt, who promptly takes it out in one hit. Then, for Dragonair, I go ahead and almost take it out with a Psychic, followed by the next Psychic. Hyper Beam does low amount of damage, takes us to the next Dragonair, where we do about the same amount of damage and take it out. Then, for Aerodactyl, we run out of Psychics, and it promptly takes us out. We were a bit unlucky on that last attempt, so we'll take out Gyarados on this attempt, then Dragonair. Still do not take it out with a Psychic as expected, but it does miss a Hyper Beam, which gives us an opportunity. Then on the next Dragonair, we only take 40 from a Dragon Rage, followed by the Aerodactyl, where I use Thunderbolt because it apparently does 190 base power, which takes us to Dragonite at 71 HP. I then struggle to pick which move. I pick Psychic and it takes us out with a Hyper Beam. Little did I know that that was not unlucky. That is the usual. I then go on for the next several attempts trying to take down Dragonite one by one, switching my strategy every single time. These strategies include using 1 Meditate on Dragonair, then using 2 Meditates on Dragonair, followed by 3 Meditates on Dragonair to see if I can one-shot the Dragonair after each attempt. Then, after all of those fail, I then used Meditate on Gyarados, who uses only Hyper Beam and Dragon Rage, so it gets no better there. Eventually, things just do not work out and we have to wait for the luck to just go our way. On the winning attempt, Dragonite just decides to use Slam instead of Hyper Beam, and that allows us to get the 2-shot. Well, after that demoralizing Lance victory, we're gonna have to go ahead and take on the champion. And, well, it starts off well, we paralyze the Pidgeot, but then it mirror moves and Pidgeot paralyzes us. Followed by the Alakazam, where our Body Slam then does next to nothing after it sets up a Reflect. I continue to use Body Slams out of frustration, mostly because there's no other thing to do other than just use Body Slam, and it eventually takes us out. On the next attempt, I go ahead and set up 2 Meditates before then taking out the Pidgeot because it sets up with a Sky Attack, followed by the Alakazam, who I then use a Body Slam and almost take it out in one single hit. Of course, the full restore delays the inevitable, but that's alright. Followed by the Rhydon, who I then decide to use the rest of my Meditates on because, well, why wouldn't I use the rest of my Meditates on? I'm going to go ahead and finish off the Rhydon and then move on to the Arcanine, who I then promptly take out with a Thunderbolt for some reason after not realizing that Psychic was going to do more damage. Then for Exeggutor, I have no other choice but to use Body Slam. Luckily, I do a ton of damage, but then I get a crit, followed by Exeggutor then getting a crit, taking us out. Meanwhile, on the next attempt, we get right back to Exeggutor and do massive damage, but then we don't crit and take it out, followed by the Blastoise, where we then level up, but still manage to take it out thanks to a crit. We finish the game at level 60 with 54 real time, 309 game time, and 12 resets. We're most likely not going to win the game with that time, but let's go ahead and check back in on Kadabra to see how it's doing. For this battle alone, I taught Kadabra Reflect because Reflect will allow us to tank all these Hyper Beams that all of Lance's Pokemon seem to use, because Psychic is quite frankly not going to be able to take out all of his Pokemon. However, that doesn't stop us from critting his Pokemon and taking them out in one hit. Now, of course, that's not going to last. We're going to go ahead and recover any damage we take, make sure to take them out as well as we can, and then move on to the next battle. Then, for the champion, we go ahead and start out by using a Psychic on Pidgeot. It doesn't take it out, Pidgeot does minor damage with Wing Attack, and we move on to Alakazam, who we then start off with Toxic, because, you know, that's the answer to Alakazam. Now, because we have to waste off a bunch of turns, I make sure to set up a Reflect, and then start chipping away with a few Psychics. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and recover any damage that I've been taking at this point, and just hope that I don't get confused or get a special drop, which neither of them happen. We can go ahead and take out Rhydon with a Psychic, then Arcanine with a Psychic. Of course, it then survives, but the next one takes it out, followed by Exeggutor, which, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to have to use a Toxic. Now, we don't really have any good options here for Exeggutor. Luckily, we're not going to take much damage because we set up that Reflect earlier, so Barrage and Stomp aren't going to do a whole lot. And for some reason, it's not going to use Hypnosis because we technically resist Hypnosis. Then for Blastoise, we're just going to go ahead and take it down with a critical hit Psychic, making us the champion of the Pokemon League. We finished the game at level 62 with 48 real time, 312 game time, and 2 resets. Now, if we take a look at the final splits chart here, you can see we kind of ran into a brick wall there at Lance. I mean, yeah, you knew this was going to happen after you saw that Lance battle. However, One thing that we can note here is we can try and do our best to alleviate this later on in the second run. We can try and arrive at the battle at a higher level. We can also try out a different moveset, although I'm not really sure that's very possible. I think the higher level is going to make much more of a difference. Also, I could consider going back for some extra vitamins. Now, one of the things you just have to accept when you play a Pokemon that relies on badge boosting is that you're not going to have a perfect first run. You need to play at least 2 runs because you got a good idea of what you needed to be at when you play the first run, and then on the second run you can try and plan accordingly so that way you can level up at the right time in the right place. So that way you don't need to waste rare candies when you don't have to, and you can use rare candies at the best possible moments. Before we start the next run, I'm going to do today's creator shoutout. And today's creator shoutout is Kangaskhan. He does gym leader runs in Pokemon Fire Red and Gen 1 mechanic tutorials. Here's a clip from his new badge boost video that I absolutely loved and will be including in the description section of my videos for badge boosts going forward.
This is the badge boost glitch. Every time our Pokemon's stats get modified, when the badge boosts are applied at the end of the calculation, they mistakenly also get applied to every other stat that you have badges for. So if I have all badges and use Harden, I can see my defense stat has increased to stage 1, but every other stat I have badges for also got oomphed up by 12.5%. Thus leading to Gen 1 YouTubers saying mad things like, I'm gonna set up a few Hardens until I start to outspeed. And the badge boost is not just limited to when our stats increase, it also takes place when our stats are decreased. Unlike with regular stat modifications that have a limit to +6 stages or -6 stages, there's no limit to the badge boosts. So long as your stats are changing, the badges are boosting.
Boost my bottom! I'm boosting! Boost my bottom! I'm boosting!
So we can actually reach the cap of 999 for a stat, just by hardening every time this Onix uses Leer. Thanks for the boosts, now get wrecked! Oh man, Kakuna, you suck.
Indeed, this is the mechanic that we are using during this run for Mr. Mime. Now let's go ahead and start the next run. With all that said, let's go ahead and start our second run. And we're going to go ahead and do it in the format I did last time because I really enjoyed the side-by-side look. The only difference is I'm going to include the timers this time so you get a good idea of just how fast or slow these Pokemon are playing and where they are in the run. As far as names are concerned, I go ahead and name Mr. Mime Marcel as a note to the tradable Mr. Mime from the game. And then I name Kadabra Psychic because, well, you're going to be hearing a lot of Kadabra used Psychic. First battle is a very easy one, as you would expect. Then, both of our competitors decide to battle the optional rival battle as it's just easy experience as we mentioned before, and this time things go even smoother as both of them really can get through this battle, no problems whatsoever. I love watching just how close these battles are. As you can see, Geodude goes down in both hits for both of our competitors, the level up only being the difference between 2 finishing times. After Brock is then Rival 2, and Rival 2 is going to be relatively easy for both of our competitors once again. They're going to be 2 shots on Pidgeotto. Then, for Abra, obviously it's Abra, so it really doesn't matter how it goes, but you know, Rattata can reliably be 1 shot with both of our competitors, the level up being the only thing that slows down Kadabra. Now, for Misty, you can see that the time gap actually got a bit further. Remember what I said about Marcel taking a lot longer to go through the route? Well, yeah, I added an extra battle so I can pick up Seismic Toss so I can hopefully get through without taking any resets. And it worked. Followed by Champ 3, who obviously is going to be just as easy as before, except now Marcel's got Body Slam added to its moveset. A lot of physical moves on our moveset actually, with both Barrier and Seismic Toss. It's actually kind of funny. It happens quite a lot. And again, we're going to learn Psybeam in the middle of the battle there for Kadabra. I accidentally moved it in the wrong spot, so it takes a little bit of extra time to get it in the right spot. Followed by Lieutenant Surge, who is going to be very easy. Again, you can see that Confusion is holding back Marcel just a little bit. Not a lot, just a little bit. And as you can see, it's still a relatively easy battle overall. The Erica battle is where you get a really good comparison of Psybeam versus Confusion. As you can see, neither of them one-shot Victory Bell, but there is a big damage difference between the two. Then we decide not to learn Double Slap, which sets us back a little bit, but not a lot, as it still takes 2 shots to take down all of our Pokemon with both of our competitors. Mr. Mime also gets a really close scare there at the end. Both of them decide to get 4 calcium, as we battled just about the same amount of trainers for both of them, so we have just about the same amount of money. So I use all 4 calcium and continue on. Then, for Champ 4, things are just as easy as they always are. Now we have Thunderbolt, so it makes it even easier for Marcel. And I also picked up Psychic along the way, as you can see, so Mr. Mime is actually now ahead of Kadabra on Psychic moves. Funny thing is, neither of our competitors are actually slower than one another. The difference between this entire battle is that I actually picked the move slower. Now, I'm going to add in this extra battle here because one of our competitors is about to get a reset, and you can probably imagine why. We don't have good physical moves for the Drowsy Hypno Trainer, and quite frankly, there's not much we can do. We just kind of have to take it and hope that things go well. Unfortunately for Kadabra, we get hit and taken out. No need to continue showing the rest of that previous battle, we win the next attempt. But now, as you can see for Koga, things are going a lot better for both of our competitors as we're just going to one-shot sweep the majority of his team. Then, for Weezing, Kadabra gets a really lucky crit, and of course the difference between time here is learning Psychic, and Marcel is able to tank a self-destruct for the win. Again, another reset incoming for one of our competitors. You can probably tell just based on which battle is going on the screen. Now, I had a choice between either showing both of the battles at the same time and then the one that wins just continues and we see what happens afterwards. However, because I go directly to another gym leader right afterwards, that seemed like a bad idea. So I decided to go with scrolling to the left and showing what happens before the battle. As you can see, we've gone through just about all of Silphco before this battle begins. And now, as you can see, Kadabra is about to take some massive damage before it finally goes down to hitting itself from confusion. Yay! But that now brings us to the battle where they're both at the same time. So, on the next attempt here, you can see that we get through Pidgeot rather quickly with Mr. Mime, and then we move on to Growlithe. Meanwhile, Kadabra is still battling with the Pidgeot. I mean, that was a duel! I mean, did you see that? Anyways, moving on, because Growlithe then got one shot by Kadabra, so that both of our competitors are on the same Pokemon once again. Unfortunately for Kadabra, it got paralyzed, and that's where things start turning for the worse, as now we're making it to the Alakazam, and unfortunately for Mr. Mime, Bubble then takes us out. Meanwhile, Kadabra is battling with the Alakazam, and as you can see, things are not going well, as we're just continuing to recover and not really getting a chance to attack. And then, as you can see, we miss over and over and run out of Psychics, where I eventually give up. But in the next attempt, things go a little bit more smooth, as we're able to take down these Pokemon with relative ease. Of course, we weren't able to one-shot the Execute, so therefore it puts us to sleep on the Kadabra, so it delays the inevitable there. But Alakazam then decides to take a dig and survive, and then disable dig, which I thought was very funny. Meanwhile, Marcel is just, well, struggling to put the Execute down. Luckily, we eventually get through, and then the Alakazam spots us a few extra turns with the disable, and then gets fully paralyzed. For Blastoise, Thunderbolt should do the trick. It doesn't, but we survive a very weak bite. Wow, that was a doozy. Luckily, we have Blaine next, who does next to nothing. So we're just going to go ahead and just spam Psychic until we get a victory. Not even stopping to use all of our meditates for Marcel, because there just isn't a good opportunity after leveling up. So I just continue using Psychic, and well, we just finish off Blaine with relative ease. Although, Kadabra, it struggled a little bit there at the end. Now, here for Sabrina, we get to see just how things change. As you can already imagine, we take out the Kadabra. Now, things aren't set up nearly as well as they were last time, as we do not level up after taking down the Kadabra. But luckily, because we're using our attack stat, it doesn't really matter when we level up. So I go ahead and set up all of our meditates here on Mr. Mime, use our body slam to take it out, and then we're ready to go ahead and sweep the rest of the team. So Venomoth is going to be an easy psychic, followed by Alakazam, which is going to get one shot by body slam. Meanwhile, Kadabra was taking out Pokemon left and right, and now on the Alakazam we have no choice but to just continue spamming Psybeam until it gets confused. Once it gets confused, then we're able to just go ahead and use Psychic over and over until it goes down. However, boy, getting the confusion took a lot longer than we expected. Now that that battle's over, I can tell you I accidentally forgot to teach Toxic before that battle, so Kadabra struggled when it really didn't need to, but I'm just going to go ahead and chalk that up to a mental error. I'm sure it won't affect the time too much, but we'll go ahead and see. Meanwhile, Giovanni was taken care of. I decided to make a separate trip here to the mart to buy 3 iron, as you can see, just because I was really hoping that I would be able to then survive either the hyper beams or the slams better from Lance. So we'll go ahead and see if that matters. But before then, we have Champ 6 here, who Pidgeot then gets taken down by a Thunderbolt, followed by the Rhyhorn, which we can go ahead and start setting up our meditates. Meanwhile, Kadabra can just go ahead and continue sweeping the rest of the team. Now that we're fully set up, we're going to be able to take down the Rhyhorn with a Psychic, and we're going to see just how much this battle differs. So for Kadabra, we're going to use the Toxic, Reflect, and just continue to use Recover. Meanwhile, Marcel is just going to take down Execute, and then Alakazam is a one-shot. So Marcel, slow but steady, wins the race, and we take down Blastoise. Meanwhile, over on Kadabra, we're still making through this battle, but it's not too long before we then take out the Blastoise, and we get through this battle. Learning from the previous attempt, I make sure to use all my rare candies but 3 to start this battle with Marcel, so we're not going to be on opposite footing. As for Kadabra, I was able to use all of my rare candies, hence the higher level. But it doesn't really matter, as you can see, we're getting through the battle with relative ease for both of our competitors. Things are going a little bit better for Marcel because we have Thunderbolt, but it doesn't really matter, it's not that much of a big time difference. As you can see, we're able to get through pretty quickly for both. There's no need for a play-by-play, as this battle is going to be a joke. And as you can probably imagine, Psychic is going to sweep through his team, no problems whatsoever. I don't think anything is going to survive a single hit. And quite frankly, nothing does survive a single hit. What a joke of a trainer. About the same exact situation for Agatha. As I mentioned, Psychic is a very powerful move. Unfortunately for Marcel, it's not able to one-shot the Gengar, which is kind of a downgrade, but we're able to get through the rest of the team without too much lag behind Kadabra, as Kadabra is able to then finish off Agatha and Marcel's not far behind. The big battle of the run here is Lance. Will Marcel be able to go through without taking a reset? I guess we're about to find out. So I'm going to go ahead and set up my meditates here on Dragonair as we get hit by 2 Dragon Rages, putting me in pretty scary condition. We get 2 lucky crits, which allow us to get through to Aerodactyl, followed by Dragonite, who then misses a slam and allows us to get through. Very lucky. And Kadabra is actually still battling, which is pretty good, allowing us to get through and make up some time here. As you can see, we're a bit of a minute behind, so it is going to be some ground to make up. Then for the champion, we're going to go ahead and start this battle. I'm going to go ahead and use all of our meditates right at the beginning, as that's the approved strategy we used last time. Unfortunately, Pidgeot does not really want to work out and does a lot of damage. And unfortunately for Marcel, we don't have Recover like Kadabra does to make up that extra HP. Luckily for us, we get a Paralyze there on the Alakazam, and we're going to move on to Rhydon, which is obviously one shot. Then for Arcanine, we're going to go ahead and take that down with one hit, followed by the Executor, who hopefully goes down at 2 body slams, and it gets fully paralyzed, as lucky as possibly can be, taking us to Blastoise, which then does not get one shot and takes us out with a Blizzard. Luckily, Marcel is able to do the battle quickly, whereas Kadabra has to do a slow and steady kind of thing. So let's go ahead and see if either one of them can catch up to each other, even with the one reset. Now, as you can probably imagine, 50 minutes is not a time that we're going to be able to make up, especially since Kadabra already has the strategy to get the victory. But we're going to go ahead and play this out anyways to see who is going to win. Maybe we'll get lucky, and maybe something will get a lucky crit here on Kadabra. It's not that I'm rooting against Kadabra, it's that just Mr. Mime is so cool, and you want to root for the underdog here, and we lost the first one, so we gotta try and win the second one. As you can see, even though the toxic strategy is a great strategy, it's a slow strategy, and it looks like it's about to be our 4th attempt that's going to get the victory here with Marcel. But we do eventually get through that battle. Mr. Mime then finishes the game at level 62 with 50 minutes real time, 316 game time, and 4 resets, while Kadabra finishes the game also at level 62 with 49 minutes real time, 306 game time, and 3 resets. That second run was a lot closer than I expected after seeing what happened in the first run, but luckily, because of our extra levels there for Lance, we were able to get through taking a little bit lower amount of damage. It is unfortunate that Lance does have Dragon Rage, making that battle going to be inconsistent no matter what Pokemon I decide to set up on, and I do need to set up, which is the big problem there. After taking a look at our final set of splits for Run 2, we can see that, well, the run actually played out pretty close. Both our competitors did just as well as I was hoping. Now, as you can see, Mr. Mime was getting a good lead, and it was holding that lead until, of course, we got to Lance and the champion. And unfortunately, there is nothing I can do to make that battle better. So, Kadabra is going to have to take the cake here. It's really unfortunate. However, Mr. Mime did give it a run for its money there on that first run when it took the lead. And I gotta say, that was exciting. Now, as far as comparing the runs themselves to each other, the right there we have Kadabra, and we didn't play better that second run, and that's my bad. But on the left here, now, as you can see, we gained a lot of time on Lance and the champion, and that's the real goal of the run, is to make sure that you're always improving. So, we did a good job. As for the rankings, we're going to go ahead and take the best result for both of our Pokemon and add it to our leaderboard. As for Kadabra, we didn't really have any issues whatsoever. We just kind of took a few stray critical hits, and that was all that it took to beat it. But as far as the game was concerned, Kadabra had no problems beating up on anything, and I guess that's going to go ahead and put it ahead of Vileplume. As far as Mr. Mime is concerned, unfortunately, when you have so many good times, you have to find a spot to put it somewhere. And, well, it did better than Lapras, but honestly, I can't really say that it did better than Dugong. Dugong was able to consistently get through the game a little bit easier, and its moveset was a little bit more diverse. Plus, Mr. Mime had to rely on badge boosting, which on its own isn't that bad, but it means that it just wasn't more powerful than Dugong to begin with. Let me know if you guys agree on where I put the rankings. They're not set in stone, but they are based on my feelings as I'm playing the game. As I have free time available, I still want to continue making these versus videos and try and get them out to you in a week. They're not going to be perfect, but nothing ever is. Next up, I plan on doing the pairing of Weeping Bell and Victory Bell. I don't want to give away why this is going to be a great matchup, but I'll give you a hint. Google their Gen 1 moveset. If you'd like a Pokemon to be done, make sure to comment on this or any of my other videos. If you have a suggestion for a challenge, ways to improve my strategy, maybe even a way to improve the quality of my videos, feel free to let me know in the comment section below. My channel is always improving, in every video I plan to bring you even better content. Keep the suggestions coming, and I look forward to bringing you another video next week. Make sure to check me out on Patreon to get yourself on the new PokeRap.